Hey, hi everyone. I just want to welcome you to our webinar, Unlock the Power of Administrator Stats. This is the first episode of our Getting the Most Out of Turnitin Feedback Studio series. And the goal of the series is to really share out best practices that educators can use with Turnitin Feedback Studio to support student learning. So we're super excited to launch this webinar series with this first episode focused on admin stats. My name is Betty and I will be your host today. I am on the product marketing team here at Turnitin, and I'm really excited to introduce our two guest speakers, Dan and Steph. They are both solutions consultants here at Turnitin. They're on the professional and educational services team, which provides training to our customers. And they're also former educators in the higher education and secondary education space. Before I dig into the webinar, just a couple of really quick housekeeping items. First, all the lines are muted. So if you want to ask a question or share a comment, just do it through the Zoom webinar Q&A panel, which is this icon right here. And we will answer your questions either live at the time you're writing it or during the Q&A time that we have at the end of the webinar. But just feel free to send your questions at any time. And then we are going to send out the webinar recording afterwards, most likely just tomorrow. So you guys, will be able to watch this on demand. In terms of today's agenda, first we're just going to go through really quickly who Turnitin is, what Feedback Studio is, and then we're going to review what the role of the admin is for Feedback Studio, talk about their first steps, do a deep dive into the admin stats and reporting and really understand what they are and how you can use those stats to build the capacity of your teaching staff, how to use those stats to drive decision making when it comes to resource planning and allocation, and of course, how to use those stats to support your students. And then we're going to do a quick review of various resources and support that you can use as an admin, and then wrap things up and then go into Q&A. So, what is Turnitin? You guys know, you're probably all very familiar with Turnitin, but just as a reminder, our mission is all about ensuring the integrity of global education and research. And at that heart of Turnitin's mission is Feedback Studio, which is the most comprehensive anti-plagiarism solution out there, consisting of checking against our student papers, internet, as well as academic journal database. We're all about improving instructor efficiency by streamlining grading and feedback workflows in order to improve student success in writing and beyond. And so with that, I am going to hand things over to Dan and Steph, who will play a pre-recorded version of their presentation, and then they'll also be here to do some live Q&A.
Betty, you're going to have to stop sharing your screen.
Sure, no problem.
Can everybody see my screen?
I can see you, Steph, right now. And it says that you started sharing your screen.
So what is the admin's role in all this? Well, at the basic level, the admin uploads the instructor's information or gets the integration set up. This is the most crucial part because without this, none of the instructors can use Turnitin. Admins are absolutely crucial for implementing the system. Admins may also want to take part in training new staff members, and they are usually the person asked about usage reports or help if something goes wrong. So let's break this out. Now, uploading instructor data or setting up an LMS integration, those topics are covered in the basic training offered by Turnitin. If you need help in either of these areas, let us know. We're happy to send you videos or we'll make sure you get set up. Now, implementation is usually a matter of getting the integration set up or the instructor's information loaded and just making sure that teachers are aware Turnitin exists, making those training options available, possibly offering breakout sessions, and of course, the data, the usage data. Now, a lot of what we're talking about is absolutely included with the Turnitin subscription. All accounts offer training, all of them. We do offer custom training. This is paid training. What it entails is a customized training specifically for your staff, usually done as a webinar, but we do offer training on site as well, just a matter of what was purchased. Now, even if your district did not purchase training, we still offer video-based training for both the admin and the instructors. The only difference is, obviously, one is more generic and self-directed. So that brings us to usage reports. Now, this is what this webinar is going to be covering. We know that data-driven instruction is here. It's here to stay. And as the admin, you are most likely the person that's going to be asked about this. You're also probably the person that people will reach out to for technical support. And after Stephanie is done, we'll talk about the options that you have and as well as some additional resources that are available. So what are the first steps to take as a Turnitin administrator? Well, the first thing to do is set up your administrator profile. Simple process, a lot like setting up an Amazon account. You want to log in to Turnitin while you go through the initial training. That way you'll be able to follow along. It's not difficult training, but there are a few things that are not intuitive. The critical steps are either uploading your instructor's data or getting your integration configured with your LMS. Again, this is covered in basic training. If you do need help with this, please let us know. Once instructors are able to access Turnitin, they will need to go through basic instructor training. There's no harm in allowing instructors access prior, but the training's important. Now, at some point, you will be asked about usage data. Again, Steph is going to cover this in detail. And finally, we do offer admins a lot of additional resources, both technical and things you can share with your staff. So now that we've got the basics covered, I'm going to let Steph jump in, and we're going to talk about administrator stats.
When you log in as the Turnitin admin, you see this page. To view the statistics for your account, click the Stats icon. You will be taken to the Stats page. The date range for accessing the statistics is listed in the upper right. It defaults to the last 30 days. You can adjust the date range from the drop-down. Once you have chosen the start date and end date, click Apply. You can see the statistics from the fall 2019 semester. The first graph shows you how many submissions were made to the account in that given time period. If you hover over the graph with your mouse, you can see the number of submissions made to the account on any given day. On the right-hand side, you will see a list of the top 6 classes that have submitted to the account in the given time period and the number of submissions made to those classes. For example, this class had 1,694 submissions, while this class had 1,654 submissions. The class name and the Turnitin class ID are listed in the first column. If you are using Turnitin through an integration into a learning management system, the class name comes over from that system. It's passed back to Turnitin, and it will show here. In this view of the graph, you can determine when your peak use is during the given time period. This peak may indicate the first major assignment of the semester. This peak may indicate midterm assignments, while this peak may indicate a final project being submitted. If you scroll down the page to the next graph, you will see how many submissions made to your account in that given time period generated, in this case, a 60% or higher match. I can also adjust that percentage as needed. In this case, I changed the percentage to show me the total submissions that generated an 80% or higher match. If you hover over the graph with your mouse, you can see the number of submissions made to the account that generated an 80% or higher match on any given day. On the right-hand side, you will see a list of the top 6 classes that have an 80% or higher match submitted to the account in the given time period, and the number of submissions made to those classes. For example, this class had 396 submissions that generated an 80% or higher match, while this class had 132 submissions that generated an 80% or higher match. This graph allows you a bird's eye view of the types of papers submitted to Turnitin. You may want to reach out to the instructor of that course and let them know that you see several submissions that have a high percentage match. In your discussion with the instructor, you may find that the instructor is using a template, and what is matching is what was in the template, not what the students provided. Or you may find out that the assignment was to answer these 6 questions, and the students included the questions along with their answers, and what is matching are the questions, not the students' answers themselves. Or it may show you that the students are struggling with understanding paraphrasing or plagiarism, and an intervention to address the issues with the students is in order. This graph lets you know if something may be going slightly off the rails and allows you, as the Turnitin admin, to get things back on track. You may even see a trend where you have a high similarity report score at the beginning of the semester that drops off as the semester goes on. This is a good indication of students seeing the report, learning from their mistakes, and applying that knowledge to the next assignment. The last graph shows how many submissions made to the account in the given time period have feedback associated with it. If you hover over the graph with your mouse, you can see the number of submissions made to the account that have feedback associated with it on any given day. On the right-hand side, you will see a list of the top 6 classes that have feedback associated with them in the given time period, and the number of submissions that have feedback in those classes. For example, this class has 1,852 submissions that have feedback, while this class has 1,791 submissions that have feedback. The feedback graph shows feedback left by the instructor in the form of quick marks, written comments, voice comments, etc. It also counts e-raters' spelling and grammar suggestions as feedback. You will probably want more detailed information than what is presented to you in these graphs. To see the details, click on Download Full Report. You can download by account if you have sub-accounts listed under the parent account. You can also download by class, by master class if you are using Turnitin to create classes via the website, by instructor, or by integration if you have 2 or more instances of a learning management system that is using Turnitin. The report itself downloads as an Excel spreadsheet. Most admins choose to download based on classes to see all the classes that are using Turnitin in a given time period, or by instructors to see who is using Turnitin and who is not, as well as identifying power users of Turnitin. These power users may serve as mentors for the more novice users. For this webinar, I chose to download the report based on classes. This is an example of the report. The first 6 columns contain information about parent accounts and their names, and sub-accounts and their names. The next 3 columns show you the month, the class ID, and the class name. Notice that for this sub-account, all the classes that use Turnitin in August are grouped together, as well as September, October, November, and December. You can always do a custom sort for your Excel file to group them in different ways. You can see how many submissions were made for each class and how many reports were generated. These numbers may differ if a resubmission is made 24 hours after the first submission. The submission counts once, but 2 reports are generated, one overriding the other. Of those reports that were generated, you can see a breakdown of 0%, 1 to 24%, 25 to 49%, 50 to 74%, and all submissions that generated above a 75% match. In the next columns, you can see how many submissions have feedback and how many were scored using a rubric or grading form. You can also get an idea of the total amount of feedback left on a submission and how many summary comments were left. Of those comments that were left, you can see a breakdown of how many were quick marks, personal or bubble comments, inline text comments, and strike-throughs. You can see how many instructors enabled e-rater spelling and grammar suggestions for submissions, and if peer review using PeerMark was created for the assignment. In addition, it is very easy to get a summary of the total number of submissions made to the account using the Sum button in Excel.
Awesome, Steph, thanks. Now, let's talk about the support and additional resources available to you as a Turnitin admin. If you click on the Help section from your account, you will be taken to our new and improved help pages. You first just select how you access Turnitin, whether through the website or an LMS. We offer documentation for admins, instructors, and students on pretty much any topic you can think of, from the basics to the more advanced topics. As an administrator, you will certainly be asked questions by your staff about the system, whether it has to do with classes or students or assignments, and there's a very good chance you'll find your answer here. Navigation is simple, it's straightforward, allows you to search by topic subject, you can jump directly to certain pages and so forth. Now, one question you will get as an admin is whether Turnitin's up or down. You can check the system status easily enough, as well as sign up for an alert indicating status through email, text, Twitter, etc. For staff members who are brand new to Turnitin, again, make sure they attend that basic training. But the documentation for instructors is excellent as well. We've included guides on everything from creating classes to the more advanced functions like PeerMark. Another option available to you as an admin is the live chat function. If you need to talk with a support engineer, you can open up the chat window, fill out some basic information, and someone will jump on with you. Now, the service is only offered during business hours, so check and make sure that it's online first. Sometimes you will get questions around issues with the site itself, and we do keep a known issues list that's available to check out. If you run into a bug, check and see if it's a known issue. Otherwise, shoot us an email and we will certainly take a look. Turnitin does roll out improvements and new features on a fairly regular basis. These can be found under the Release Notes section. This page details all of the latest releases, bug fixes, etc. Now let's say you actually do need to open a support ticket with Turnitin. What you'll want to do is go down to the Help Desk option at the bottom, and that will take you to our new and improved Support Center. There are a lot of articles that address known fixes. However, if you need to open a case, you go ahead and click on Case Request, and you're taken to a pretty simple web form. It'll ask you some basic information about the product, your name, a description of the issue, and so forth, and then you'll go ahead and submit this. This will automatically create a help desk ticket. You'll receive an email acknowledging that the ticket was created, and one of our support engineers will be in touch shortly. So now what I would like to do is go ahead and hand things back over to Betty. I do appreciate your time, and I hope that you found the information useful. We are going to be answering questions here at the end of the webinar, so please do hang out, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thanks so much, Dan. All right, so we're just going to now do a quick recap of what we've discussed. So first, we talked about the administrator's role, what their first steps are. Then we did a deep dive into the admin stats, into the 3 types of reports, right? The first one is the number of submissions. And so as you review, your number of submissions, consider asking yourself these set of questions. First, who is using Feedback Studio and who isn't? Why not? And you can do that by pulling the report by instructor as Steph demonstrated. And so knowing why people are using it, why not, that why will inform how to maximize the use of Feedback Studio, right? So it'll give you a sense of whether you need to have a refresher or provide additional professional learning. And also, as Steph pointed out, look at the peaks in submission. So do those dates line up with key milestones like common assignments or benchmarks? Are instructors on track with teaching their curriculum or their syllabus? And if not, how can you support them, right? So the second set of reports that we looked at were around the high similarity reports. So here, some of the questions that you can consider asking yourself as you're reviewing that data is, what patterns are there, right? Can you look at those patterns and figure out what the root causes or common problems are? What are the skill gaps, right, that might be evident through the data, right? Are students not really understanding proper citation or summary? Are they not managing their time well? And by digging into that, you'll hopefully ask yourself, what resources can I provide to address those skill gaps, right? Whether it's improving the curriculum or beefing up the writing center resources at the university. What are we doing instructionally to help meet those needs? And what else can we do to meet those student needs? And then the last but not least, the third set of reports that we reviewed were submissions with feedback. And feedback, whether it's form of grammar check or comments left by instructors. So here, some of the questions that you should think about asking yourself as you look at the data is, are instructors really making the most out of their feedback tools? Are you seeing that people are going in there and using the quick marks or the rubrics? And if not, do you need to provide more professional development or resources about those specific features? What we see is that instructors may be familiar with our similarity report, but they might not be as well versed in the feedback and grading tools. So you just want to understand, whether instructors are managing, being able to create feedback for everyone, and whether students are able to receive the quality feedback that they need. As Steph pointed out, you really want to drill down to see instructor use and look at who the power users are, right? Because those power users can mentor people who are novices. They could also be leveraged by creating a list of their tips, and then potentially even speaking during professional learning sessions. So that's just a quick recap of the stats. We also talked about various resources for support, ranging from help guides to our new support center, as well as case requests. But one of the most important resources that you can access is actually your Turnitin account representative, right? So this person can help you navigate through your data and help you interpret it and help you figure out what types of actions you can take. So please don't hesitate to reach out to your account representative. So with that recap, we're gonna go into Q&A. All right, so let's see, what kind of questions do we have? One question we got was around just, the similarity score. What is considered a good similarity score and why, which is a fairly common question that we get. Dan, Steph, do you guys want to chime in there?
Unfortunately, the answer is there is not a good score or a bad score. It really depends on what the assignment is. So for example, if you have an assignment that says answer these, summarize these 3 quotes from Lord Byron in 2 sentences or less, you could conceivably get a 50% match. You could also take a look at a paper and say, oh, it was just a 10% match. That's not a big deal. But the percentages are always based on the total word count of the student paper. So if a student turns in a 5,000 word paper and your originality report score is 10%, that means that at least 500 words match to something in the Turnitin database. You need to take a look at what's actually matching. Is what's matching the questions that you ask the students to answer? They put in the questions and then the answers are not what's matching, just the questions. Are you using a template? Are you doing something like a lab report where all the materials and methods sections are going to match all the way across the students? So there is no magic number. It really depends on what the assignment itself is set up for.
Great, thank you for that very helpful answer. Another question that came in is around, what is considered like good usage in terms of, the number of submissions or the number of submissions with feedback. And I can jump in on that one. So similar to, Steph's previous answer, it really depends on your specific situation, what institution type you are. So if you have questions around, what does good usage look like, you should definitely reach out to your Turnitin account representative, and they can help you look at the data and figure out where you guys are at. Your account representative can potentially provide, benchmarks from similar types of customers. So I would say if you have questions around that, really please reach out to your account representative.
And Betty, I'm seeing some questions in the Q&A that I think we can probably answer here pretty quickly. So please forgive me for butchering your name. It looks like Ruchika. Any patterns, root causes means, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that what this person is asking is regarding what Steph had described as far as the patterns that you look for when you download that report. Steph, if you were an instructor, because you were an instructor, and you downloaded your report, what patterns are going to cause you to be concerned? How are you going to actually use that report to drive your instruction further, moving forward? I believe that's what that person's asking about, root cause and how to drive it.
Well, in my particular case, I actually was not an English teacher. I taught entomology, so I taught about insects, and all of my papers were pretty much scientifically driven papers. So I had a tendency to cast a wide net when I created the assignment. I didn't make any exclusions for quotes or for the bibliography or for small sources. I cast a wide net because I wanted to see what was going on. Was I seeing, there's only so many ways that you can say totalitarian government. Was that being highlighted across the papers? For my lab reports, was I seeing the same thing across my materials and method sections? And so that kind of gives me that baseline of what are, expectations of matches and what are expectations that things should not be matching. So the things that my students would have to be putting in as part of the introduction or as part of the discussion in the results section, I would expect that to be more their words versus materials and methods, which I did expect that to match across. Does that help answer your question?
If it doesn't, please feel free to clarify in that Q&A section. And again, I apologize for butchering your name. This was Ruchika was asking that question. Gaurav, at times introduction material methods analysis standard keywords are counted in plagiarism. How to go about it? I assume what they're asking about is how to differentiate when it's actually counting things that are obviously not plagiarism. And I'm happy to answer this one. So there's two ways to go about this. And the first is when you actually set up the account, you actually do have the option to start to exclude matches. You could exclude based on keywords, where you can actually tell the system to ignore certain keywords. You can also exclude based on a percentage match. So a percentage match, when you look at an initial match, it's going to give you an overall percentage of, let's say, 20%. Well, you can go down, and in fact, we'll switch over and we can show you what this looks like live here in just a second. You can actually go on and look at the individual percentage matches. A lot of times the system, if you're looking at 100% of the paper, a lot of times the system is going to match things that are obviously not plagiarism, and things like open the door, right? Open the door has been used in lots and lots of publications. It's not plagiarism, it's just common. Well, you can actually set the system to ignore based on a percentage match or a certain number of words. So you can say, I don't want to get a match that's less than a dozen words, or I don't want to see any matches that are less than 10% or 12%. And what that does is that cuts down on the number of false matches, if you will. And you can also set in the settings for the assignment to ignore the bibliography as well. And I know I'm describing that without showing that. I'll switch over and show that to you here live here in just a second. So hold that thought. Laura Dean missed the part about the ticket system. Be happy to show that to you. The video is actually going to go out again, so you'll have access to see that video. But in the ticketing system specifically, if you go into your administrative view when you log in, at the bottom it says Help Desk. That's where I was accessing that from. Nuria Garzas is asking, are schools managed through ManageBack? Do we need, from an administrator point of view, to set the instructor's account in Turnitin, or is this set automatically? If you are using Turnitin through an LMS, you do not need to go in and upload your instructor's data. The LMS will actually do that for you. So Donna's asking, let's take a typical submission for an extended essay submission. What is an acceptable similarity match? So we get this is probably the most common question that we get from instructors. What's a good match? What's a bad match? And like Steph was talking about, there is no such thing as a good match or a bad match. What there is information. And as an instructor, when you look at a match, if it says 100% match, it's probably plagiarized. If it says something that's 25% match, that goes into those settings. Is it counting the quotes the student included? Is it counting the information from the bibliography? Things that you can turn on and off as an instructor. And so that's not generally something that an administrator worries about, but you will get those questions as an administrator from instructors. And again, as soon as we'll get through some more questions, and then I'll switch over to a live demo of what we're talking about here. So keep that. So how to exclude title page automatically without excluded by instructor? The only way that I think you can do that is, I don't think you can do that, Joseph. Yeah, Steph is shaking her head no. What a good percentage to exclude. So it seems like a lot of the questions are actually around that that exclusion and how that works. So let me do this really quickly. Betty, if you will.
You can take over. I've stopped sharing.
Okay.
Let me.
So what I need is I actually need, Steph, do you have a screenshot? I was going to show this real quick as to that, the similarity report and where you actually set that.
Give me just a second.
Yeah. And while she's pulling that up, let me, okay, so good percentage to exclude. You know, here's what I would, this is not official Turnitin. This is me as an instructor. What I equate the similarity report to is I'm kind of flying over the countryside and I catch something that catches my attention. That's probably something above 25% or so. It doesn't mean that a student is plagiarizing. What it means is it's caught my attention. So I'm going to go into the report view and I'm going to take a closer look. It does not mean, there's no hard and fast number where it says, hey, it's above 25% students cheating. It does not mean that. What it means is I'm going to go in there and look and say, am I excluding the bibliography? Am I excluding those small matches? And do I see large percentages that are matching external resources like from websites or papers? So it's information that we're providing to an instructor. Now on the flip side, if you get a 100% match, a lot of times what will happen is that it's matching to another paper in the database. And at that point, what happens is that you, perfect. What you have to do is actually, if it's matching to a student within your system, within your school or your university system, you'll be able to see the text. You'll be able to see the text brought up. If it's matching a paper outside your system, it gives you the option to request access. Now, for privacy issues, the access has to come from the institution where the paper is being matched to, and that's up to them. But it still gives you an exact percentage. So let me go back to the earlier questions regarding how do we set these settings for the similarity report. What we're looking at here, Steph is actually sharing an assignment setup page. This is actually within a Canvas environment, but these options show up whether you're using it in the website or just about any other LMS. And what it's going to allow you to do is start to exclude things. So the first option, it says exclude bibliographic materials right there. You can exclude anything in quotes. And then next option is those small sources that I was talking about. So that's really the first place to start. And you can do this in two places. You can set this up as global settings for an entire assignment, so every paper that comes in from students, or you can do this individually as an instructor on a case-by-case process in the actual student report. Let's see.
We
Go
had
ahead.
a question from Letitia in the chat. Do you recommend excluding the bibliography? It
really,
depends.
Yeah, that's really up to the instructor. Generally, what my personal opinion, this is my personal opinion, is that I like to look at everything. I like to have all the information. It's very simple to exclude it in the actual report view. However, some instructors feel very differently about that, and they only want to look at things that they would want to take a deeper look at. So really, I'm not going to answer that question directly, other than it's a personal choice on the instructor. Personally, what I like to do is I like to have all the information displayed, and then I like to be able to dig down and kind of take a deeper look at those papers if I have a question.
I will say, as an instructor who used Turnitin at the higher education level, I very rarely excluded bibliographic materials because I wanted to see if my students were copying each other's bibliography page or if they were using the exact same sources. For my classes and my assignments, I would not have expected my students to be using the exact same sources for each one of their assignments. I actually never excluded quoted material either. And the reason is, in my class, when I talk to my students, if something is highlighted, you need to check it. If it's highlighted and the first thing you need to ask yourself is this a quote? If the answer is yes, did you put quotation marks in a citation? If you did that, you can go on to the next suggestion. If, however, the answer is no, this is not supposed to be a quote and it's coming up as a match, you didn't paraphrase it well, and therefore you need to go back, adjust your paraphrasing skills, and be sure to put a citation on it. And frankly, I never excluded small sources either. The reason is I never knew how big of a paper my student was going to be submitting. So if I set this at percentage and I put that down at 10%, that may not sound like much. But again, if a student turned in a 5,000 word paper, that 10% means I'd be excluding all sources that are less than a 500 word match. And that may not be acceptable for the institution or for my class. These, again, what Dan was talking about, these 3 settings can be adjusted at the individual submission level. So if you want to cast a wide net at the assignment level, you can adjust them, each one of these, at the individual submission level if you need to do some more investigation. There was another question, do you provide the report to the students? I always provided report to the students. Whether or not I was using Turnitin as formative or summative feedback, and that's where this comes into play. If you generate the reports immediately and you allow students to resubmit, that means you're using the originality report and even the spelling and grammar suggestions as formative feedback. That means that my students can see the report, check their work, see if there's any issues, make those changes, and submit the best version of their paper to me. I could use it as summative feedback to do that first option, to generate the reports immediately and students cannot resubmit, so it's one and done. Or I can choose to allow my students to resubmit all they want until the due date, but they can't see the report until the due date. So the first and the third option are summative. The second option is formative, but the key is allowing the students to view those similarity reports. If the students never see the report, they don't know what they're doing wrong. They don't know if there's any issues, and they can't make the change either in the current assignment or future assignments to become better writers in the process.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I generally, in most of the training that I've done for instructors, they want to be able to use this. They want to be able to use this as training, not gotcha, right? And that's Turnitin's approach too. We don't want to be the plagiarism police. We really do want to give students the information they need in order to understand, because a lot of students don't realize, at least initially, that they're doing anything wrong by copying and pasting off an internet source or whatnot. And so what I've always recommended is that you allow students to see the report ahead of time and come to you as the instructor with questions if they don't understand, because a lot of times you can point out very simple things that they could do. You didn't cite this information correctly. You can use it in your paper, but you need to cite the source and so forth. And then it becomes a dialogue, and then it becomes a learning experience for the student, how not to be, how academic integrity and academic honesty, they have to be taught, and this is a perfect tool for doing that. There was another question from Tim. Again, I'm sorry to butcher your name, Bahula. When downloading an instructor report, is it possible to have aggregated data for the entire report period rather than having it broken out by month? He can do it in Excel, but it's inconvenient to add the formulas when the report spans months, such as the default 30-day reporting period. And I don't know the answer to that, Steph, other than having to do it manually.
It is a manual process because it will pull out all of August and September and October. I do have a tendency to sort when I'm doing something like that by class, and then put a space in and sum it all for just that class, so that I have all the submissions and information there for just that class.
Right, right. Ruchika asks, information from a single source. She believes it shouldn't, like 5 to 10% from only one source, not acceptable. What are our opinions on that? Generally, again, that's one of those where I tend to agree with that, because I want students to be able to pull from multiple sources. But I've also had students that really, they only had 2 sources to draw from, especially on some more complicated subjects or some complicated topics. So again, I generally agree with what you're saying and where you're going with that, but I also know that there's probably plenty of situations where they don't have that many options to choose from when they're actually citing sources and whatnot. So I would take that with a grain of salt. Yeah.
And Tim, regarding your question as a feature request, please contact your Turnitin account manager, and they will run that up the flagpole and get us in there. That's actually something we're looking at, is what could be better to give to you, what kind of format and what kind of data mining do our admins like to have. And so if you would please contact your Turnitin account rep, and she's going to keep track, or he's going to keep track of all of that. That way we can address it later on in our product development.
Cool.
Great. I think we've answered a lot of really great questions. Thanks so much to everyone for their participation. We're excited to launch, this series off with this episode. So stay tuned for our next episode in April. We're really excited about that one as well. And as a reminder, we will be sending out the recording to this webinar afterwards. So thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye.